Sunday morning chat today, although I am cheating, this is Saturday, but you'll see it on Sunday. It's something I've never done before. It's totally different, and so this is nothing more than an introduction. And you might think, oh, he's up and about and he's better. Well, no, he isn't. What he's doing is managing the situation. My back's still far from right. But over the past week, what I've done is found out what is the most painful thing and what is tolerable and what is sort of okay. So last night was the Orchid Society meeting and I'd already worked out that coughing and laughing is not the best of ideas, but because I got a lift and somebody did all the lifting and everything for me, I thought I can do this. All I've got to do is get in and out of a car twice. And getting in the car wasn't as, because it was a high up car, wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but not good. Getting out of the car was not funny. But I managed it, I got to the meeting, and boy am I glad I did. It's a lady called Helen Milner, who, if you've been to some of the larger shows, she always has an educational display, and she's into real close-up photography, and she's been into that to find out what's going on with the plants, what the bits are all about. So very, very close in macro photography. She's got an extension to her lens which turns it into a low-powered microscope. Yeah, so that's one thing. And she does what's called stacked photography, which is a gadget that you put your camera on with a little motor. And what it does is anybody who does photography knows that when you're taking stills, the closer you get to something, the narrower the depth of field. And flowers, blooms have depth to them and shape. You can never get the whole thing in focus. So what you do is you put your camera on this little set of tracks with a motor, and you take a picture right on the outskirts of the bloom, then you move in a bit, and take another one, and you move in a bit. And each one of those photos will have a different part of the bloom totally sharp. And then using some software, you put them all together and you get a picture where the whole bloom is absolutely sharp. Now that's fascinating in itself, but she wanted more. So she got access to a scanning electron microscope, and this is heavy duty stuff. You don't find these on eBay, which gets you down almost to cellular level. And that enabled her to see the surface shapes of some of the blooms, where they were knobbly, where they were grooved, where they were almost smooth. And that got her interested in other aspects of working out what the bits of the plants actually are for. What is their function? Why are they like that? So that was the inquisitiveness. And the last time I saw her speak, which must be a few years ago now, same sort of talk, but one of her stages of work was in its infancy, and that was Restrepias. And nobody could really work out what the 3 antennae were for. And that's never really, it's a riddle that's just never really been solved. Now obviously orchids, one of their main functions with their shapes and their colours and their fragrance is to attract a pollinator, almost a sole purpose. There's all sorts going on there. There's mimicry, there's orchids that actually look like the pollinator, and sometimes those add in a fragrance that's like the pheromones that attracts the male. So, you know, there's mimicry going on, there's trickery going on, there's all sorts of stuff. It's a fascinating subject in its own right. But anyway, the Restrepia always fascinated her. Once she got to the electron microscope, things became clear. And I don't get gobsmacked with orchids. They're plants, you know, in different shapes, different sizes, different colours, different ways of blooming, all that sort of stuff has sort of become old hat. It's just orchids as a general topic, and it's my hobby, and that's sort of where it lies. But at that meeting last night, I got to a point of revelation that not only was it gobsmacking, the thought that went into working out the solution was just mind-boggling. So the rest of this is me trying to explain the sequence of events that took place to come to the conclusion. So now when somebody asks me what those antennae things are for, I actually know, and I'm going to pass it on. And you should be suitably gobsmacked, because putting this lot together was hard work. So the next bit will be stills with me talking over them, and then I'll come back at the end. Okay, first job then is to just look at some Restrepias to sort of get a feel for what sort of shape we're talking about. They're virtually all quite small blooms, and they are incredibly difficult to photograph for a start because of the bits that stick out in all directions, as you can see. These first few pictures are mine, the rest are I was going to say stolen, I'll say borrowed off the internet for educational purposes, of course, because I wanted certain angles to be able to explain. So what you're basically looking at is what looks like a lovely large lip, when in fact it's not. Yeah, well, I'll come on to that. And then you've got some stuff going on in the centre, which is very small, and then these antennae things. It's just a basic shape. You know, I mean, see, trying to get a shot there, trying to take a picture of that, I've either got to get the stripy bit in focus, and then the antennae aren't in focus. They are very difficult, but that stacked arrangement would have been good. So we're looking at an awful lot of stripiness going on here. So from a pollinator's point of view, you've got bright colours sort of leading in to the centre. Now, sometimes those stripes are rows of spots, but most of the Restrepias seem to have that type of look to them. They do vary, but often brightly coloured and leading to that central point. So, but you know, a lot of orchids have that mechanism within them. This isn't that unusual. But if you look at this one, you know, the stripes do come together and become more concentrated in the centre. Now what you've got structure wise, I've always said the sepals are the bud. Yeah, well, when this is in bud, the bright stripy bit at the bottom and the top antennae sticking up are what make the bud. So in fact those are the three sepals, but the bottom two are fused together. On most Restrepias. On some of them they are actually separate or partially separate. And then, well, then you think, well, then we get two petals and a lip, don't we? Well, the two petals are the little antennae sticking out the sides, and the lip is the tiny little bit in the middle. Now it looks like, if you take that one for example, that white bit in the centre is the lip. It's not. It's the bit behind it that's a different colour to the stripy, in this case spotty bits. It's that flat area that forms the lip. That's your landing platform. That's what it's trying to get the pollinator to. That's the bit it wants it to be on. So everything is leading in to that point. And that white bit in the centre there, that nodule, I'll show you in a minute because it's quite revealing when you look at it from the side. It's not actually flat against the plant, it stands out, and that's where the pollena are. They're on the back of it. Yeah, so they're facing in to the centre of the plant. So if you look here, the two fused sepals are actually slightly separated. You can see that landing platform now is different. Now obviously insects see in different light spectrums to us, so that bit stands out. And you see that nodule part in the centre, you can see it's slightly away from the from the actual landing platform. So that's our basic sort of structure and shape, and all the Restrepias are so similar, their differences are almost negligible. Some have got longer antennae, some have got short stumpy ones, some are wider, that stripy spotty bit, some are quite long and narrow, but they have a basic structure. That's how they work. So closer in now, you can see that landing platform is slightly different, yeah? And then all the bits to do with reproduction are right in the centre of that shot. So, you know, your pollinator and all the other parts are there. So that's where the pollinator needs to get to. So obviously the plant is designed in such a way that as a pollinator is approaching, for whatever reason, which we'll get to in a minute, that's the centre of attraction. That's the bit that we want the pollinator to get to. So stripes, colours, patterns, and there's virtually no fragrance on Restrepias. So it's going to be mainly colours and shape and a guide to that central point. We still can't see the purpose of those antennae. There just doesn't seem to be a reason for them to be there. Let's have a look at one from the side. Now you can see that that dangly bit is set away from the plant. Yeah? You can see the slightly raised lip, which is effectively like the landing platform. And now you can see the three antennae are pointing forwards. So this is still the bit that the pollinator is aiming at, but it's going to be coming in on this shot from the side. So its angle of approach is out there, coming towards the plant. The antennae are sticking out towards it. They're not upright, they're not out sideways, they do point forward. That becomes really important, yeah? So what was special about those three antennae then? Well, when the electron microscope went onto those little dangly antennae, it was found that there are cells on all of them that do give off a fragrance. So all three of these points are now giving off a fragrance, and the maximum concentration of those cells was on the very end, pointing away from the bloom, not out sideways, not out backwards, pointing in the direction in which the pollinator would be approaching, given the colours, you know, and the landing platform, and all the guides are leading to that centre point. So what we've now got is fragrance coming out from those three antennae, attracting the pollinator. And it travels in a direction away from the plant because of the concentration of the cells and their position. So like I said, the main concentration of that fragrance is moving away from the plant from three precise points. They are quite precise, they are very small. Nonetheless, this is leading to the conclusion of the story. If you can get to the conclusion before I actually say, then you're doing pretty well. So in analysis then, a pollinator approaches from what would be the right of this shot. It's attracted by the colours, the lines to that central point, and now we've got fragrance involved that wasn't really known before. And if these cells hadn't been detected by that sort of electron microscope, we still probably wouldn't know what these antennae are for. So we're getting there, but it's still not clear what's going on. Why three? Yeah. Now if you imagine if you're looking from the front of the Restrepia, so we go back to the view of the pollinator coming towards the plant now, it starts to become clear, and the revelation's coming soon. It's quite dramatic. So we're now looking at the front of the plant, the pollinator's eye view, on its flight path, on its approach. It's got its landing gear down, yeah, flaps are out, all that sort of stuff. It's coming in as a helicopter goes over. Marvellous. Okay, so now we go back to those three antennae that we now know are giving off a fragrance directly towards the approaching pollinator. So you can see there's a triangle shape there, yeah? And therein almost lies the solution. It just needs another little bit of work. So we've got some triangulation going on here on a fragrance. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. So if you take that top antennae, there's a concentration of fragrance coming out from the centre of that circle. Yeah? You there yet? And there's another concentration of fragrance coming out from that point. And from that point. Have you got it yet? We've got 3 sources of fragrance coming out from 3 separate points. Where is the maximum concentration of that fragrance? Bang in the middle where they overlap. Let that sink in. That's pretty special. To have worked that out, and it needed an electron microscope to do it, because those cells were not detectable any other way. We would probably never have known if that individual hadn't gone down to that level on those 3 points. And I reckon that's pretty damn clever. So this bloom has got an awful lot going for it. It's got colour, it's got stripes and spots and bright bits in the middle from that point of view, and it's now got a triangulation of fragrance with a concentration right where it wants the pollinator to land. Poor old pollinator doesn't stand a chance, does it? It's going to get led in there by the scruff of the neck. Fascinating. So there you go. I don't know about you, but I just found the whole concept of working out what parts of things are for and their function. Not just looking and observing, but trying to work out, why is this like this? What purpose does it serve? So fascinating as far as I was concerned, and also fascinating is the fact that I've worked out, while I'm standing I'm comfortable, and I'd say quite comfortable. Walking around is a dull ache, nothing more than like getting up with a bit of a headache. Manage that. Getting into a chair is okay, yeah, probably because I'm lowering myself. Getting out of the chair is still eye-wateringly painful, but as it's only done now and again, I'm not stoking up with painkillers anymore, because there's no flipping point in doing that for an odd moment during the day. So I'm managing the situation, and I have plans to see somebody about it once I'm confident I can get in my car and drive and get there. So I will be seeing somebody to see if anything can be done. Difficult to imagine what, but anyway, so that's the Sunday morning chat. Something totally different. I've never done anything like that before, and all I'm doing is passing on other people's information, which is often what a lot of Orchids is about, if you think about it. We all start knowing nothing, and we build up our knowledge and information and stuff on the way, you know, and that process never stops. As I've always said, the learning never stops. But that was something I never expected somebody to come up with an explanation for. Quite astounding. See you next time.